September 1st, 1939, 62 German divisions with 1,300 aircraft started the invasion of Poland. The decision to invade Poland by Hitler was a gamble. The army was not at full strength and the economy was not doing well. The invasion alarmed Hitler's generals and raised opposition. Hitler believed the invasion of Poland would result in a short, victorious war. Defeat Polish. He defeated Polish armed forces in a blitzkrieg offensive. He also thought Neville Chamberlain were weak and he would opt for peace. Hitler had intimidated Western powers because of a revision to the Treaty of Versailles and German rearmament in 1935. In 1939, Hitler wanted Czechoslovakia back and told Poland to allow the construction of new roads and railways to improve communications between East Prussia and Germany. Hitler's annexation of Czechoslovakia broke his guarantee not to ask for more territory. Hitler was not deterred. April 3rd, he ordered the Wehrmacht to prepare for the invasion of Poland on September 1st. On September 1st at 6 a.m., Warsaw was struck by the first bombing raids. The bombings created chaos and terror. On September 3rd, Britain declared war on Germany and France declared war as well. On September 8th, panzers were on the outskirts of Warsaw. Polish forces were ordered to back and regroup. Warsaw held out until September 27th, but 18 days of bombing made them surrender. Britain and France did not accept German peace. His gamble failed, and Poland was the first battleground of the war.
An assault on the Low Countries, Holland, Belgium, and Luxembourg, was the essential next step in Hitler's plan to consolidate control of Europe under German rule. Having neutralized the Soviet Union and absorbed Western Poland and secured Germany's northern flank, on May 10, 1940, the Wehrmacht rolled across the Dutch border in the now familiar blitzkrieg fashion. German parachutists seized strategic points, dive bombers destroyed the small Dutch air force, and the infantry followed panzers across the flat land, eliminating any resistance. The Hague and Rotterdam fell quickly to airborne troops, and the main force took only a few days to penetrate the Dutch interior and link up. On May 14, 1940, Rotterdam was heavily bombed, with estimates of up to 1,000 civilian deaths, and the heart of the city was destroyed, an atrocity with no military reason. The Dutch royal family escaped to England, and the country surrendered on May 15, 1940, after 5 days of German slaughter. Belgium and Luxembourg were attacked on the same day as Holland. Tiny Luxembourg fell in a few hours. Belgium was able to mount a strong defense, although the result was the same. The blitzkrieg tactics of simultaneous air assault and direct attack on the ground by fast-moving armored infantry made a mockery of prepared defenses and Allied plans. From the invasion of Poland in September 1939 into the spring of 1940, France waited behind the mighty Maginot Line with an army that on paper was the strongest in Europe. During this phony war or Sitzkrieg, the French hoped they were not on Hitler's list, but they were confident they could win if challenged by the Germans. Not until the disaster in Belgium did the French wake to the dimensions of their danger. As the battle raged at Dunkirk, the French army formed the defensive Weygand Line opposite of the Belgian border, trying to extend the Maginot Line to the west. The effort was futile. On June 3, 1940, Paris was bombed, and 2 days later 100 Wehrmacht divisions attacked furiously at four points, outflanking the static Maginot defenses and overwhelming the pathetic Weygand Line.
Hitler invaded Russia in the summer of 1941, which was called Operation Barbarossa. Blitzkrieg tactic was used to cripple the Soviets. 1 week into the invasion, 150,000 Soviets were either dead or wounded. During the Battle of Moscow, the Russian armies were forced to stand their ground despite cold conditions of 43 degrees below freezing. The bitter Russian winter, however, crippled the Germans. They were not prepared for the harsh climate and they were running low on food supplies. During the 20th century, Hitler set in motion one of the worst conflicts, the Battle of Stalingrad. After more than a year of defeats, the Soviets used a new tactic called the fighting retreat, which hurt the Germans' supply lines. Hitler suffered his greatest military setback of the war in the summer of 1944. Stalin's Operation Bagration in Belorussia eliminated 3 times more German army divisions than the Allies did in Normandy. Hitler retaliated by demanding specific divisions of the German army stand fast to the last man, the very tactic that Stalin had deployed so disastrously in the early days of the war. Defeat for Germany was only months away. Final victory came for Russia when Soviet soldiers hoisted the red flag over the Berlin Reichstag in April 1945.
The attack on Pearl Harbor was a surprise military strike conducted by the Imperial Japanese Navy against the United States Naval Base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii on the morning of December 7, 1941. The attack was intended as a preventive action in order to keep the U.S. Pacific Fleet from interfering with military actions the Empire of Japan was planning in Southeast Asia against overseas territories of the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and the United States. The base was attacked by 353 Japanese aircraft in two waves, launched from 6 aircraft carriers. 4 U.S. Navy battleships were sunk, 2 of which were raised and returned to service later in the war, and the other 4 present were damaged. The Japanese also sank or damaged 3 cruisers, 3 destroyers, an anti-aircraft training ship, and 1 mine layer. 188 U.S. aircraft were destroyed, 2,402 men were killed, and 1,282 wounded. The power station, shipyard, maintenance, and fuel and torpedo storage facilities, as well as the submarine piers and headquarters building, were not attacked. Japanese losses were light, 29 aircraft and 5 midget submarines lost, and 65 servicemen killed or wounded. 1 Japanese sailor was captured. The attack came as a profound shock to the American people and led directly to the American entry into World War II in both the Pacific and European theaters. The following day, December 8th, the United States declared war on Japan. Domestic support for isolationism, which had been strong, disappeared. Despite numerous historical precedents for unannounced military action, the lack of any formal warning by Japan, particularly while negotiations were still apparently ongoing, led President Franklin D. Roosevelt to proclaim December 7, 1941 as a date which will live in infamy.
The Normandy landings were a massive joint service operation with naval, aerial, and paratroop forces. Their operation began on the morning of June 5th, when minesweepers cleared 10 lanes through German minefields in the English Channel. At 5:30 a.m. on June 6, nearly 200 Allied ships began bombarding German defensive positions along 80 kilometers of coast. The bombardment lasted 2.5 hours. Disoriented by Allied deception operations, the Germans had not taken the overnight operation seriously enough to alert Rommel or Hitler. As a result, their ability to repel the landings was fatally compromised. 4 tanker divisions under Hitler's personnel command were not mobilized until late afternoon, and played no part in the first day's battles. The landings were further secured by air and naval support.
During the final stages of World War II in 1945, the United States conducted 2 atomic bombings against the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan. The first on August 6, 1945, and the second on August 9, 1945. For 6 months, the United States had made use of intense strategic firebombing of 67 Japanese cities. Together with the United Kingdom and the Republic of China, the United States called for a surrender of Japan in the Potsdam Declaration. The Japanese government ignored this ultimatum. By executive order of President Harry S. Truman, the U.S. dropped the nuclear weapon Little Boy on the city of Hiroshima on Monday, August 6, 1945, followed by the detonation of Fat Man over Nagasaki on August 9th. These 2 events are the only active deployments of nuclear weapons in war. The target of Hiroshima was a city of considerable military importance, containing Japan's 2nd Army headquarters, as well as being a communications center and storage depot. Within the first 2 to 4 months of the bombings, the acute effects killed 90,000 to 166,000 people in Hiroshima and 60,000 to 80,000 in Nagasaki, with roughly half the deaths in each city occurring on the first day. The Hiroshima Prefectural Health Department estimates that of the people who died on the day of the explosion, 60% died from flash or flame burns, 30% from falling debris, and 10% from other causes. During the following months, large numbers died from the effect or burns of radiation sickness and other injuries, compounded by illness. In a U.S. estimate of the total immediate and short-term cause of death, 15 to 20% died from radiation sickness, 20 to 30% from flash burns, and 50 to 60% from other injuries, compounded by illness. In both cities, most of the dead were civilians. 6 days after the detonation over Nagasaki, on August 15th, Japan announced its surrender to the Allied powers, signing the Instrument of Surrender on September 2nd, officially ending the Pacific War and therefore World War II. Germany had signed its Instrument of Surrender on May 7th, ending the war in Europe. The bombings led in part to post-war Japan's adopting 3 non-nuclear principles forbidding the nation from nuclear arraignment. The role of the bombings and Japan's surrender and the U.S.'s ethical justification for them, as well as their strategical importance, is still debated.